sign of respect for your office and the office of the President who you are representing here today. Mr. Nkomo, before I give the floor, is there any other comment that you feel we'd like to make? I think we have covered it. So, Mama Biza, you see before you members of the Matabeleland Collective, here gathered to obtain feedback from you. Please, the floor is now yours.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by saying all protocols observed. We may all be aware that on the 21st of March, His Excellency the President had an interactive dialogue with most civic society groups based this part of the country. And I was privileged to be part of the gathering that was at State House on the 21st of March. And during that discussion, as you may be aware, a number of pertinent issues touching on political, social and economic, even cultural, were raised with the President. And I'm sure for those of you who attended that gathering, the President made an undertaking. In fact, in his own words, he said, upon return to Harare, he was going to have further discussions with his cabinet pertaining to the pertinent issues that were raised. So it is in light of that discussion that a matrix, which I trust has been circulated, I'm sure all of us are in possession of an implementation matrix, which touches on some of the key issues that were discussed at that meeting. Now, the purpose for my presence today is basically to confirm that, yes, indeed, this matrix is originating from the office of the President and Cabinet. And further, to confirm that as government, we are ready to implement some of the key issues that are highlighted on the matrix, of course, through the relevant line ministries. So, if you allow me, I will go item by item on the items that are listed on the implementation matrix. And you may want to know that this matrix is a result of what we minuted as the Secretariat on the 21st of March. We may have left out certain issues, and we are happy to take them on board if at all you feel there's something that was discussed which is not reflected on this matrix. We were the Secretariat. We're simply capturing what was coming out from the discussions that were taking place. So I'll start with the first item, which is the issue of birth certificates. The implementation modalities that came out from this item were that we are supposed as government to facilitate the issuance of birth certificates of victims affected by Gukurahundi. As we looked at the implementation, we also focused on whose responsibility is it to ensure that these birth certificates are issued, and the Minister of Home Affairs, obviously, is the ministry that is responsible. Let me point out at this stage that this matrix has since been circulated to the relevant ministry, to the Minister, the Permanent Secretary, to start implementation. And as you can see, there is a timeline. The President has indicated that all those that are responsible for implementation are supposed to report back on progress. This can only be achieved through deliberate cooperation between the implementers and those that require the service. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm appealing to all of us to cooperate as much as we can The moment the officials from the relevant ministries commenced in fact, to continue with the dialogue by way of engaging you, by way of requesting you on what is it that they require to start the issuance of the birth certificates of victims who have been affected by the Gukurahundi. On the issue of death certificates, it's more or less related. Even if we look at the legislation that governs birth certificates, it's both for birth certificates and death certificates. So again, the Ministry of Home Affairs is responsible. If you look at the implementation time frame, this is something that the President felt should be implemented immediately without delay. So we expect that the Ministry of Home Affairs has since commenced the communication with the Bulawayo Collective in terms of coming up with the implementation modalities. The issues of exhumation of victims of Gukurahundi, you notice that we put under the implementation modalities that we should allow legal, I would like to emphasize the word legal exhumation and reburial of victims in an orderly manner. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I would like to emphasize the legal aspect to it, as we were given these instructions as the Office of the President and Cabinet, it was felt largely that there is a law that governs the issue to do with the exhumations of in any case, even without focusing on Gukurahundi, there is a law that governs the issue of exhumations. So when we say in a legal manner, we are saying that those that would like to conduct the exhumations should follow the procedures that are laid down in terms of the law. And as we looked at the implementation practicalities, we realized that it is the local authorities that are mostly involved and who are supposed to be assisting people to achieve an orderly exhumation and reburial of the victims of Gukurahundi is what came out from the engagements with the President. Again, you find that the Ministry of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage are mostly responsible to assist communities that have been affected in this regard. So in terms of implementation, you notice that we say that it has to be done upon receipt of request. Again, this is meant to facilitate orderly exhumations through the assistance of the relevant government ministries, so that it's not done in a haphazard manner, it's not done in a manner that violates the law. Because if we look at our act that governs the burials, reburials have to be done. They have to be notified to the relevant authorities. It cannot be done by any person anyhow without notification to those that are responsible, the relevant ministry, as I said. You find that there are penalties in terms of the relevant legislation for any person who does this without following the proper legal procedures. So our expectation as government is that there will be further engagements between the officials from the Ministry of Home Affairs and any other relevant ministry, perhaps local government, in trying to achieve orderly and legal exhumations and reburial of victims. Under the fourth item, you find there is an issue of open discussions on Gukurahundi. This is an item for those that were present again at State House on the 21st of March. It came from the floor In fact, there was a concern that people are being victimized, arrested, and subjected to all sorts of abuse whenever there is mention of the word Gukurahundi. The president was very clear about this issue. He says this should not be the case, and that people should be free to discuss their experiences. So in terms of implementation modalities, we say that we should devise protection mechanisms for those that are affected by Gukurahundi to be free to discuss their experiences. It would appear as if it's a bit broad and vague, but what we had in mind was, much as there are laws to protect people, and much as the Constitution also gives people the freedom to freely express themselves, but we thought perhaps if the relevant ministry allows further engagements with the communities that are mostly affected, they should get to know, they should get to the bottom of it to understand what is it that the people have been experiencing in terms of failing to freely discuss, freely express their experiences. So the protection mechanisms that we had in mind is something that will be a result of further engagements between the officials from the Ministry of Home Affairs and the affected communities in order to allow people to express themselves. We also appreciate that by freely expressing themselves, it's also part of the healing process that we all envisage. We very much appreciate that there is need to allow people to, some people are still mourning, some people are still aggrieved. So it is only through freedom of expression, freedom of discussion, sharing experiences that perhaps people may get to hear. We borrowed a very interesting phrase that we learned on the 21st of March per Dr. Ngwenya. He said, pain not transformed is pain transmitted. Am I right? Pain not transformed is pain transmitted. So because of that, we thought we should come up with those mechanisms to allow people to freely express themselves, to freely discuss their experiences in the process of healing. So the Ministry of Home Affairs, once again, is the responsible ministry, and we expect as government that officials from the Ministry of Home Affairs should be up and about, visiting, discussing with various communities who have been affected, and the implementation is supposed to be immediate. When we say immediate, we mean like as soon as one receives this implementation metrics, there should be phone calls, perhaps to the Matabeleland Collective, to ask, for instance, how do we go about, what should be the starting point in terms of the engagements. And our fifth item on provision of medical assistance. Again, this item was raised on the 21st of March to His Excellency the President, and it was mostly a concern that there are victims of Gukurahundi, some of whom are failing to access medical attention. Some are maimed, some have chronic ailments that they require medical attention, and yet they are unable to provide for their own medical needs. So the implementation modality we have here is that special provision for medical attention should be provided to victims of Gukurahundi. Again, you notice this may appear to be broad, but what we had in mind is that when you reach out to the communities, it is only them who are able to identify and bring to the attention of government as to not only the numbers, but the names, the details, the location, where to find the victims, so that medical assistance can be provided. And again, this is an issue for immediate implementation by the Ministry of Health and Child Care. And because this involves pain and suffering, it's a human suffering issue, a human right issue, unfortunately, which has been denied for a long time. But it's never too late in terms of pain and suffering. We believe if the Ministry of Health and Child Care immediately engage the communities, we shall be talking of people getting medical assistance in our next report. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we believe we are going to be in a continuous engagement process. We are also going to be following up periodically to see what results have been achieved ever since the 21st of March, when these things were first debated. So the Minister of Home Affairs is expected to be calling you, asking for details on how and where to reach some of these victims who require medical attention. This is urgent in our view. There's the Zambezi Water Project, and this is an issue which has always been discussed, but without much in terms of progress. However, on the 21st of March, the matter was again put to the attention of the President, and it is my hope that this should mark a turning point where we shall see progress being reported on this very, very important project. So we are saying the Zambezi Water Project should be prioritized, as it is going to unlock economic value to citizens across the country. We know it was raised for this region, but by its very nature, the impact of the project will be not only for this region, but for the entire country. But we know where people are experiencing the worst in terms of shortages of water. So again, it was said to the responsible ministry, which is Lands, Agriculture, Water, Climate and Rural Resettlement. They have been told to give monthly updates in terms of progress. You may want to bear slightly a little bit with these implementing ministries, because, for instance, when I spoke to the Minister of Lands about this issue, it also requires budgetary and cost implications. So I'm sure they are working on that. It's something maybe we may give them a bit of time, but because the President himself said they should start to work on it and give monthly updates, so we are also expecting them to account to the President, and also in terms of fulfilling the President's promises to the people of this region, you may also request that there be answers as to what exactly they are doing on the ground. On item 7, there is the issue of alignment of local governance legislation. This is an issue of harmonizing laws governing local authorities to ensure efficiency and ease in the implementation of devolution. On this one, maybe let me just share a little bit. As the Secretary for Justice, you may be aware that one of our mandates is to align legislation with the Constitution. The alignment of devolution laws has taken us a bit of some time. And you may want to know that it was very difficult for us as Minister of Justice to get the cooperation that we required from the Ministry of Local Government to align these laws. I'm very happy that the current dispensation have seen it fit to say we are now devolving, and they've given us specific instructions to say now you can align the laws with the Constitution. I'm sure you heard us in the past. We've always been bemoaning the lack of cooperation from line ministries in terms of alignment of legislation. because much as we align legislation, but we get the input from the relevant ministries. So this is one area where there was no cooperation in the past. So I was happy to see that now there's the willpower. We are already seeing laws being harmonized. I understand the Minister of Local Government working in conjunction with our Department of Legislative Drafting at an advanced stage of coming up with these laws for local governance. But us as Minister of Justice, we are also working on a constitutional amendment to, in order to enable devolution. You may want to know that we noticed that there are contradictions in the Constitution itself, especially pertaining to members of parliament who have been incorporated into the provincial councils. There's a section, should be section 129 if I'm not mistaken, which talks about the composition of these provincial councils. And again, when you go to the executive section where it speaks about how a member of parliament vacates office, you find that a member, one of the reasons why a member of parliament will vacate office is when they become a member of these councils. So on the other hand, it says reason for vacation, and on the other hand, they are members of provincial councils. So to us, it was an inconsistency, a contradiction, for which we have amended the Constitution. We have gazetted the amendments, but they have to run for 3 months before they are brought to Parliament. So you can see that we are determined to work on the laws that enable devolution. So because we have been asked to implement immediately and to finalize within 6 months, we believe this is achievable. In fact, as much as the Minister of Justice is concerned, this is achievable. So as we continuously engage, let us ask each other where are we, and even challenge each other to say, you said this, but where are we today? You know, it's a process of just complementing each other. And again, item 8 talks of devolution. It's a continuation of devolving government processes to prioritize local businesses in the awarding of tenders and giving locals first preferences when filling in positions. This is an item, again, that was brought to the attention of His Excellency, the President, on the 21st of March at State House. There was a concern that there is need to also prioritize locals when doing business. There was a feeling that a certain region was getting priority over others, and the President was made to comment on it. So this is mostly in terms of the issuance and awarding of tenders, and it's a process whereby we thought the Minister of Local Government, Public Works and National Housing is supposed to work on. To be honest, I'm not so sure how the Minister of Local Government is going to come up with implementation modalities here. They are well placed to explain as they engage with yourselves on how they are going to do it. But the President still felt it was immediate and it required continuous implementation, since it's an ongoing thing. Tenders come and go, but it cannot be a once-off process to say we've corrected today and tomorrow you repeat the same undesirable conduct. So the Minister of Local Government, we expect them to again get hold of the Matabeleland chapter and pave a way forward in terms of this critical area. And we also have social service delivery, where it was felt that we need to improve social service delivery through provision of schools, clean, safe, potable water, and clinics to needy areas as contained in the attached report. I made mention of a report. The report is mostly made of the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 21st of March, touching on all issues in detail. For those that attended the 21st March meeting, I'm sure you still recall a lady, was it from Rwanda, who narrated her ordeal. Yes, you can see she's here. And she was talking about the water shortages, how much she has to travel long distances in order to get this very valuable commodity. And the president felt sometimes this could be a result of negligence by the responsible authorities, because the president also felt it doesn't take much in terms of sinking bores and so forth. So the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare was also given the mandate to look into the issue of improving the social service delivery. You must note that whilst the item is worded in a broad manner, but we had in mind the plight of the lady in Rwanda, such that for purposes of implementation, we are looking forward to seeing that area getting first priority over other areas. We deliberately said we improve social service delivery as if it's broad. Yes, it's broad because everyone needs clean water elsewhere in the country. But because we're concentrating on this part of the country, this is where we are expecting to see the first results as we expand to other parts of the country. And I'm not speaking for myself, but this is the instruction that we got from His Excellency to say that lady from Rwanda, her case is very simple. I'm sure some people are just simply sitting on their work. Why can't they attend to the area? We want to hear her saying, Your Excellency, thank you very much. Our situation is improved when we further re-engage. So this is what we are expecting the Minister of Public Service to be doing. On number 10, there was an issue to increase participation of women. And this was to ensure that there is inclusivity of women in Parliament, Cabinet, and other governance structures. Yeah, this also was discussed very emotionally by some of the women who attended the 21st meeting. You can see the Ministry of Justice has been tasked. But when I got that assignment, I scratched my head to say, surely how do I influence what happens in Cabinet, for example? But as we discussed further with some of my colleagues, we thought perhaps with collaboration with the Ministry of Women Affairs, we could look at our laws and see where the loopholes are. Much as the quota system is provided for, what penalties are there for non-compliance and so forth. Perhaps we could revisit our laws, revisit the penalty sections, so that you do not see a cabinet of 3 women and 100 men and so forth and so forth. So it's a question of looking at the existing laws and improving on them in order to uphold the cause of women. On item 11, the NGO state engagement platform, to establish an NGO state engagement platform for sustained dialogue between state and non-state actors. This was mostly for the Ministry of Public Service. When the President addressed on the 21st of March, he came along with the Minister of Public Service, and she made an undertaking on her own. She said she wanted to engage the NGOs so that there is a platform for dialogue between the state and the non-state actors. It was also accepted that generally there is mistrust between state actors and non-state actors, and suspicion sometimes. In the worst case scenario, it degenerates into hate. But if you look at it really, it's for no apparent reason. We said there's one thing that unites us. we are all Zimbabweans. And all the efforts that we try to put across are for the betterment of ourselves and our people. So we thought it good that we should establish such a platform with the Minister of Public Service expected to have a first interaction with this part of the country. And I'm sure she'll be getting in touch with you very soon. And yes, this was also against the background of some NGOs suspecting that they were going to be deregistered, speculation, falsehoods, misrepresentations, and so forth and so forth. So the minister thought this is a very good idea to try and iron out our differences. We may still work together and even pursuing different interests, agreeing to disagree in a polite and humane manner. This is what is sought to be achieved under that item, and we are hoping that it's going to be implemented immediately. And the issue of the NPRC, that is the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission lifespan, the suggestion was that it be extended for a further, was it 5 or 10 years? In fact, coincidentally, on the date when the president engaged this community, there was a judgment from the High Court in Masvingo where the High Court judge extended the lifespan. In fact, he ruled in favor of extending the lifespan of the NPRC. And I'm happy the president indicated that he was very much supportive of the idea of the extension of the NPRC. So on this item, the Office of the President and Cabinet, together with ourselves, the Minister of Justice, we are expected to make sure that this is achieved. Some of you may want to ask me that, yes, the judge made a ruling and we saw the Office of the Attorney General appealing against the decision. Yes, that was before they got instructions that we are no longer opposing this. Because naturally we were going to appeal, but the appeal may not be prosecuted because of this instruction from the president. But the initial reaction was to appeal, you know. So this is where we are. And lastly, the expansion of the education curricula to include at least 2 local languages in the curricula. This was given to the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, and I'm told it's something that they've already been doing. And the last item touches on police inaction. Let me start by saying that the events of 14 January up to the 16th of January, where we saw people looting shops, destroying properties, harming and injuring other innocent people, they should not be repeated. And we were very concerned when we heard that there were allegations of some members of the police force who were perceived not to be assisting members of the public who were affected by these riots. So the matter was brought to the attention of His Excellency, and the issue was to investigate and report on the causes of police inaction and perceived insubordination during 14 to 16 July riots. And this is one item where I'm also appealing to all of us that whoever has information that will lead to exposing some of these undesirable elements, it will be mostly appreciated, because the Minister of Home Affairs alone, they may never make any headway without the assistance, especially from the members of the public who witnessed some of these things. This item requires immediate implementation and a report back within 3 months. The time frame is measured from the date when the ministers received these letters. So most of them must have received the letters not later than the 4th of April. So the counting has already started, and it is expected that in 3 months' time, we should get reports of these things. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the implementation metrics of the issues that were discussed at the meeting with yourselves, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Permanent Sec. Colleagues, the journalists are chomping at the bit outside, waiting to come in. So if I can ask you to take the opportunity before we let journalists in to engage the PermSec on the questions. Let's make it short, sharp, because we are going to repeat the process when the journalists are in, but we will ask you, this is your question time. When the journalists come, you will no longer be able to ask. Quick, short, sharp, please. Thank you. Remember, identify your name, organization.
Thank you for the opportunity. Alfred Sihwasibanye, Animal Welfare and Conservation Trust. I'm noting that the matrix that the Honorable Permanent Secretary read is a bit different from the one that we have. Number 4 is missing from the matrix that we have, and number 14 was not read by the Honorable, by the PMSEC. Maybe is the issue. Then the second issue is on devolution. On point 7, we note that issues of natural resources are not noted there. We believe that they are core in Matabeleland.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kumblani Maposa. I work for Habakuk Trust. I think I just have a comment on number 12. The issue of promotion of local languages. May it not be in the, I think the spirit and the desire is that not only in the education sector. We have a problem even in other sectors like police, like health, where you can't communicate with a nurse because they can't hear the local language. So you can't communicate with a police officer, with an agri-tax officer, because they can't hear the local language. Even it goes even to teachers and other sectors. And also it's not only about language, because language goes with culture. It should be people that understand the local language and the local culture, because culture is also, language is just a component of culture, but we communicate through other means, other cultural insignia, which are not only language. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Permsec, in the document that we had been given under item 12, it's written promotion of local languages, and the comment that is being shared there is it's not only related to education. When we go into government offices, when we interact with police, army, other spaces, we are made to speak a certain language which some of us cannot speak. In your version that I'm eavesdropping into, you seem to have worded it slightly different. So I think the point is still valid, is that we are concerned that language and culture go together, and all government spaces should mainstream the respect for people's language and culture, not just in education circles.
I take note of what you've raised. You will notice that there is a slight difference between the circulated matrix and what I was reading. We first prepared this as officials, but when we then went to edit with our principal, we came up with what I was reading. I hope it's even better than the first. Yes, this is an edited version after consulting the principal. The one that was circulated was what we recorded at State House. It was very raw. But when we then went to the principal to edit, we came up with what I have done. Although I noticed, again, I omitted the issue of corruption. The issue of corruption was taken very seriously, and is one item which has already started implementation. Remember the issue we got about the Bubi, the Rural District Council? Our anti-corruption unit is already working on the issue that was highlighted at that meeting. So I'm very sorry about the circulated matrix. It's related somehow in terms of content, but as we recast with the principal guiding us, we came up with what I have. We'll make sure we circulate the correct version of the matrix. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have, okay. All right, and then let's come this side.
Thank you. Mine is on number 13, the police in action. We request that it should not only be confined to the 14th and the 16th. We have a problem with the police, especially in Gwanda, in the rural areas, where the police, our cattle are being stolen. The police are told, reported to the police, we all have brands, and the brands are registered. But you find that the cattle are being sold without consultation, and our cattle are never found. We believe that the brand that is recorded, should registered, should be a trace enough to say whose cattle is this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take note. The only reason why we highlighted the 14th January, we realize is one of those inactivities that have heavily affected this area. And we may take that on board for a broader investigation, but at the same time, concentrating on the events, the riots, the looting that took place here in Bulawayo from 14 to 16 January. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's come here to Hanana and then this side of the room. Remember, we are being short and sharp.
Okay, thank you. Tulisi Hanana, Tumiso Tabema Foundation. If you look at 1, 2, 3, and 4, they deal with issues that emanate from Kukuraundi. But my concern is that the aspect of Kukuraundi itself is not being addressed. What is that aspect? Number one, we spoke about the issue of acknowledgement. We want government to acknowledge that Kukuraundi indeed happened, and we wanted it to be decriminalized. So one of the ways of doing that, we would expect that at some point we will get an apology and an acknowledgement from government, and particularly from the head of state. And the second thing will be, we need to know what happened to the Tumbuchen and Chambakwe commission reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can see from my version of the edited, we actually allocated 5 items to Kukuraundi, and number 4 could be very interesting. Open discussions on Kukuraundi. To me, it's a very good starting point, because the moment people are allowed to freely discuss Kukuraundi, something that was taboo in the past, it's a milestone in my view, and let's capitalize on it, find a platform to discuss, and continue to engage until you get where you aim. So in other words, you can see we have touched 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 items, all dedicated to Kukuraundi and related issues from my edited matrix.
Thank you. Let's come to this side of the room. And then if we could please come and give Inkosi Matema an opportunity to engage.
Okay, my name is Noctula Ngube from Matabeleland Development Initiative. Mine, I would like to seek clarity on number 12, promotion of local languages. You seem to say, Madam Permanent Secretary, that there is talk of introducing 2 local languages into the curriculum across the country. So I'd like to seek clarity on which languages are we talking about? Are we speaking that everyone, we're talking about everyone having, all across the country, everyone learning Ndebele and Shona, introducing Ndebele and Shona into the curriculum?
Yeah, thank you very much once again. The issue of local languages, I thought I had taken note of the suggestion that I got earlier on. But however, when we said at least 2, that was the minimum. We know the Constitution provides for at least 16 languages. But we thought we were addressing the concern that was raised. But now, because of the input that I got, I thought I understood it better to say it's a cultural issue. We also want languages that are spoken in a certain area and not necessarily an education issue. It's one of those matrix items that may need to be recast, perhaps.
Thank you. If we can have Nkosi Matema.
Thank you very much. I think I've heard what Mrs. Mapiza have said. He said the president said he's open for dialogue about this cook around thing. But I think as long as the president is not public, national televisions, radios, and the other national papers, that's a non-event. We need to hear his voice openly telling the people that.
Yes, thank you very much. I take note of what you have just highlighted to say maybe at a higher level, these things need to be spoken, not only by the communities, but at even government levels. I take note. I shall carry the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we have two more, and then we need to ask for the press to come through? Who has not spoken, and can we also have a lady, please? Tall. There's a lady right at the back with red. Sorry, has she spoken? I don't think so. And someone else who has not spoken. There we are. I'm seeing Liberty. He has not spoken.
Okay. I think I'll just move a motion to say, Madam Speaker, Madam Mapiza, may you please also include something to do with youth, increasing youth participation in decision making, considering that young people have been sidelined for a long time, and also considering that they have the capacity to actually influence some of the things. I'll also speak on youth empowerment using local resources, considering that Matabeleland is actually rich in natural resources. I think we have to actually have a bias in terms of youth empowerment using maybe local resources as part of youth empowerment process.
Thank you very much. Actually, this was an omission. If you still remember, we had the youths speaking out at State House. Like I said, we were taking minutes as officials, but we also require help. What I'm going to do from your input, I'm going to add an addendum to the matrix that will be addressed to the Ministry of Youth and to attend to the issue of empowerment. I'm going to propose that, of course, for approval by the principal, but it was actually an issue of omission because the youth spoke at that forum and they also spoke around the issue of empowerment, unemployment, if you still remember. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sengizacela Liberty, then sizagcina ngawe Khulu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Lipat Bebe. I work with the National Youth Development Trust. Just two quick issues. Number one, is it possible that the matrix could consider appointing a lead ministry on issues where there are more than one ministry involved, so that there is easier accountability for easy follow-up as well by ourselves. The second one, on matters where particularly I think I've had a lot of issues around Kukuraundi, can we consider also involving the Chapter 12 institutions, the constitutional commissions, so that there is also greater involvement and interaction with members of the public on some of those issues? I noted a lot of issues around Kukuraundi, the missing NPRC, issues around women's issues, the missing gender commission. So I think we need to also consider a partnership with the line ministries. Thank you. I mean with the Chapter 12 institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall be adding a lead ministry and all the enablers, including the Chapter 12 institutions and other players in the same sector. Thank you very much, and that's it.
I think the suggestion also is to make sure that we can include them under each item where we deal with Kukurawundi as NPRC, now that you've given them a longer term. And don't forget to also give them money to work. Let us please close with Ukulu.
Thank you, Chair. My comment is on number 5, Zambezi Water Project. The ministry that has been assigned this task has actually in the past done a disservice to the project, because this project is a public-private partnership. But the ministry has gone on to seclude the public who actually started the project, hence giving it a name, National Matabeleland Zambezi Water Project, which is not its name. So we are saying, can the project go back to its origins of being a triple P project? And the ministry cannot, on its own, go ahead and implement that. When they came in, it was because they'd secured money from China, which later we understood was diverted to Tokem course, using Matabeleland Zambezi Water Project. So we don't have faith in them doing us justice. So can it please come back to its status of a triple P? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that input. Yes, it is again in line with the previous thought that we should include the lead players. I also agree with you. It's a matter perhaps for the JVC joint venture, the build, operate, and transfer, which is covered under the Joint Venture Act. And that way, the Minister of Finance becomes leading in terms of provision of resources. The other ministries will now complement what the ministry responsible for JVC. We are also responsible for the JVC as Ministry of Justice. So we will take the advice from the previous speaker to add the lead ministry, the enablers, and list all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Permsek. Can I please hand over the microphone to my colleague Dumi to close this session with just some concluding remarks, and then we will be asking for the press to be allowed to come in. If we can please ask for you to give them space at the front here, and so that they can easily come in and ask questions, and if the chair can start to come forward.
Thank you, Jenny. Also, thank you, Madam Pisa, for the statements that you made. So just in a nutshell, there is also a need to, there will be a need to circulate the latest version of the matrix, which captures some of the things that have been omitted. And secondly, there have also been additions today around issues of Kukurawundi, issues of natural resource governance, issues of youth participation, and also issues of incorporating and including the Chapter 12 institutions, issues of local languages being used across the board in different ministries and so forth. So I'm sure, Madam, I know you are very fast in terms of implementation. I'm sure very soon we'll be having the completed matrix that will then circulate for to ourselves, and it will be our duty then to follow up on the issues that are raised according to the thematic committees. Remember, as a collective, we do have a number of thematic committees. There is the National Healing Thematic Committee, which is headed by Dr. Matleda and Buso Fuzwayo. we have the thematic committee on economic justice that is headed by Mike Ndiweni from PVTA. We have the thematic committee on devolution that is headed by PUPRA and Christian Legal Society. And we also have the thematic committee on social inclusion as well. So I'm sure those thematic committees will then be able to robustly and energetically engage Madam here with us and the relevant line ministries. I think the press is now here with us, so I'll immediately disappoint myself from being at the front, disappoint myself both emotionally and physically by vacating from the front and hand over to Mike, who is supposed to chair this session. Mike, I need to hand over the mic to you for this particular session.
Good afternoon. Actually, a minute before afternoon morning. I think my name has been mentioned, but I will repeat it for the official purposes. My name is Michael Ndiweni. I am with the Bulawayo Vendors and Traders Association, and I'm the lead thematic committee for economic justice. But for now, I'll be the chair for this session. If you check your program, I think we have about an hour or so, but I will try to maybe get us done maybe 45 minutes or so, because we started a bit late. I will maybe take this opportunity to introduce my speakers. In front, we have Pastor Trevor, or Bishop Trevor Masuku, who is the convener for Matabeleland Collective, is going to give us a statement from the collective to the members of the press. And then he's not a stranger anymore, Matabeleland is then going to take the media through the document that she has, so that they get it correctly, not from social media, but from the representative of government, in this case, the President, Umama Virginia Mapiza, from the Secretary for Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs in the government of Zimbabwe. And then we have her colleague here, Mrs. Chiwenga, who worked closely with Umama Virginia Mapiza. And then maybe a roving mic, you want to know, members of the press that are here present, just to quickly tell us where you come from, your media house, so that we know who is here. A roving mic.
Afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Mvundus from Daily News.
Afternoon, I'm Duduzi Lenyati, a freelance reporter.
Hamila Shumba Chronicle.
Afternoon, Crispin Kumunyu from Sunday News.
Rumita Imhlanga, Sunday News.
Newsday Ngobani Dlovu. Mkhululi Ncube, Star FM. Kudzana Msengi, I'm a freelancer.
Freelancer. Thank you so much. I must put this also on record, and a disclaimer that this space that we're having now is for journalists and the panel in front. I will not allow the members of the collective to further probe questions to the panel. So it's strictly for the journalists. I think your role will be just to listen. I will decide should there be time, and then maybe if you want to ask further questions, but that will be at my discretion. Then, I think having said that, I will ask Pastor Trevor to give us his press statement on behalf of Matabeleland Collective as the convener.
Thank you very much, Session Chair. Thank you for calling me a bishop. I'm not yet a bishop. I am still a pastor. I am working my way up, but not yet. Thank you very much. Madam Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Mabiza, Chief Matema, here present, fellow religious leaders, colleagues and friends, may you allow me to say all protocol observed. I bring to you a speech that has been prepared by the Matabeleland Collective just to bring us up to speed on the events that have brought us to the table today. In mid-2017, civic society organizations and church bodies began to work together on a process of asking citizens to dream of a new Matabeleland. This process continued in various spaces, meaning that the various organizations were working individually and collectively to try and forge a new approach to the issues that were bedeviling the region. In November, several organizations besieged the City Hall car park here in Bulawayo, and they engaged passers-by on how a new Matabeleland and a new Zimbabwe would look like and how this could be reborn. They came together and began to call themselves the Western Region Collective. As things progressed, the name changed from the Western Region Collective, and it became that's when the name the Matabeleland Collective was then born. And this was a platform with the objective of building consensus and an effective social movement within Bulawayo, Matabeleland South and Matabeleland North for a unified voice on various issues. The consultative process led to the hosting of a People's Convention on the 2nd of December 2017 at the large City Hall in Bulawayo. And this convention brought together a consolidation of 4 overarching issues, and the participants mandated the convening leadership to synthesize the following issues into a regional position. The unified position in support of healing concerning issues of Kukura Hundi, economic renewal, social inclusion, and equality and devolution that based on compensatory development. A key mandate that was given to the convening leadership was to go and tell these things to the president. Our views, go and tell the president our views and give him our recommendations. In February 28, the convening leadership finalized the Matabeleland collective position into a compendium. And this is the compendium that was produced, and this has been the document that we have been working with. This set the stage for starting the process to secure an appointment with the head of state as per the mandate that had been given when we met in December. Just over a year later, the President of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Comrade Idim Nangagwa, responded to the invitation and met members of the collective at State House here in Bulawayo on the 21st of March 2019. On this historic day, more than 70 organizations represented by over 100 civic and religious leaders had a 2-hour frank dialogue with the President, and key issues were raised in this meeting. There were delegates from Bulawayo, Bubi, Plumtree, Nkai, Lupane, Gwanda, Insiza, Mangwe, Emangwe, Matopo, Umzingwane, and Victoria Falls, amongst other areas. And they all spoke their mind on various issues, and in response, the President made undertaking on behalf of government. We asked for the following as urgent short-term deliverables. Number 1, the decriminalization of Kukura Hundi, so that people could be allowed to openly discuss and talk about their experiences. Number 2, we asked for true and factual notation on death certificates. Number 3, we asked that the development of Matabeleland be prioritized. And number 4, we asked for this in writing as a firm undertaking from the President, and this is why we are here today. The Matabeleland Collective received a response from the Office of the President and Cabinet in the form of an implementation matrix. And today we have with us the Permanent Secretary of Justice and Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Mrs. Virginia Mabiza, and she is here to share with us what the Office of the President and Cabinet have spoken about and have developed as a matrix on the way forward concerning the issues that were raised. Madam Permanent Secretary, with those words, may I invite you to address the journalists this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the journalists. Yes, in fact, let me start by confirming that, yes, indeed, today I'm here interfacing with the Matabeleland Collective to confirm the implementation matrix which has come from the Office of the President and Cabinet. This is a matter which arises from the meeting that the President held with the Matabeleland Collective on the 21st of March at the State House here in Bulawayo. You may want to know that the meeting was arranged to discuss, as my colleague has rightfully pointed out, wide-ranging issues affecting the people of Matabeleland region, and a number of pertinent political, socio-economic and cultural issues were discussed at that forum. As a result of such discussions, the President then went back and through the Office of the President and Cabinet, an implementation matrix was created to attend to the issues that were discussed at the meeting. You may want me now to take you through the implementation matrix. The first item on the matrix pertains to the issue of birth certificates. And in terms of the implementation modalities, facilitation of birth certificates of victims affected by Gukura Hunti is a priority. And in terms of the action and the implementation, the Ministry of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage has been tasked to look into the matter, to work with the affected communities, and to immediately and continuously implement this item. That's number one. Or number two is, again, death certificates. And death certificates are supposed to be provided to dependents of Gukura Hunti by the same Ministry of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, of course, with the assistance of the affected communities. And again, once again, this is a continuous, immediate action. We also have the issue of exhumation of victims of Gukura Hunti, or you may want to call them reburials. And in terms of the implementation modalities, the government is to allow exhumation and reburial of victims in an orderly and legal manner. Again, the Ministry of Home Affairs is tasked to carry out the task, and the implementation can only happen upon request by the affected communities. On item 4 on the implementation matrix, it's on open discussions on Gukura Hunti. My colleague here was talking about decriminalization on discussions. We looked at the law. The law already allows people to freely discuss, but there are reports that continuously came forth whereby people felt they were prohibited from openly discussed. But however, in his own words, the President, on the 21st of March at Bulawayo State House, he stated that people are allowed to freely discuss. In terms of the implementation matrix, mechanisms for protection of those that are affected by Gukura Hunti should be put in place so that they are able to freely discuss their experiences. And the Ministry of Home Affairs, once again, has been tasked to carry out that, and immediately. There's again the item of provision of medical assistance. And during the 21 March discussions, there were concerns that there are victims of Gukurahundi who are still suffering from various types of pains inflicted by what they went through, and they are calling for medical assistance. However, in terms of the implementation matrix, we also realize that there could be other people affected other than those from Gukurahundi. So there is an implementation plan to provide a special provision for medical attention to victims of Gukurahundi and any other victims who may be suffering and require medical attention. The Ministry of Health and Child Care rather, and Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare are tasked to implement, and this has to be done immediately according to the instruction from the Office of the President. Item 6 pertains to the Zambezi Water Project. This is a long outstanding item, as we may all be aware, but however, it was still discussed on the 21st of March with His Excellency, and the instruction now is to prioritize the Zambezi Water Project, as there is a realization from government that it will unlock economic value across the country. And the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development is the lead ministry in terms of implementation of this item. There is the item on alignment of local governance legislation, where the implementation is on harmonizing laws governing local authorities to ensure efficiency and ease in the implementation of devolution. Again, the Ministry of Justice, our Ministry of Local Government, we have been tasked to implement this immediately. And you may want to know that this is an ongoing process of alignment of legislation with the Constitution. And under devolution, in fact, devolution is one of the items that were also debated and discussed during the 21st engagement. The instruction being to devolve government processes by prioritizing local businesses in the awarding of tenders and giving locals first preferences when filling in certain positions, with the local government ministry together with the Ministry of Finance expected to work together immediately on this item. And social service delivery, to improve social service delivery through provision of schools, clean, safe, potable water, and clinics to needy areas is discussed during the 21st meeting. There were a lot of concerns concerning the lack of access to clean water, and also children having to walk long distances to schools and so forth. So the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare again have been instructed to work together with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health and Child Care to implement immediately. And we also looked at the participation of women. There was a concern that women continue to be left behind, and the instruction was that government should ensure that there is inclusivity in women in Parliament, Cabinet, and other governance structures, with the Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Justice having to work together. And as I was explaining this morning, I said it was an issue of revisiting our already existing laws to see if there are any gaps that can be manipulated or that can be used to promote the well-being of women. The other item that was discussed was the NGO state engagement platform. Here, the Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare was instructed to establish an NGO state engagement platform for sustained dialogue between state and non-state actors. I wish to highlight that the Minister of Public Service was also present on the 21st of March when these issues were debated and discussed, and I'm sure she's ready to implement. And the issue of the NPRC, that is the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission lifespan, the concern was that its lifespan be extended, and so that it doesn't terminate rather prematurely when it is all along not been resourced, non-functional, and so forth. So the Office of the President, together with the Minister of Justice, are working towards the extension of the lifespan of the NPRC. In fact, in his own words, during the 21st discussions, the President authorized and approved that the NPRC's lifespan should be extended. And this is supposed to be with immediate effect. And on the other item, there are allegations of police inaction, and these mainly arise from the events of the 14th of January, where we saw massive looting, destruction of property, and all forms of lawlessness across the country, and with Bulawayo mostly affected. So the instruction now is that there be investigations and a report on the causes of alleged police inaction and perceived insubordination during the 14th to the 16th July riots. So this is an item for the Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Justice, and it is supposed to be implemented immediately with a report back expected to be before His Excellency the President within a space of 3 months, counting from the 4th of April, which date this matrix was dispatched. So there was also the issue of corruption. During the 21st March discussions, there was a concern about corrupt activities that are taking place at certain local and rural councils. So the instruction here is that it ought to be acted on urgently, swiftly, immediately, and with a report back to His Excellency the President as soon as possible. So I'm also happy to report that this is an item which my ministry is also looking into, working together with Ministry of Home Affairs, the Anti-Corruption Commission, and other interested players. So in short, this is the matrix, and we believe it captures all that was discussed on the 21st of March. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will hand over to the session chair, who will then take us on to the question and answer.
Thank you, Madam Pemsek. Thank you, Pastor Masugu. For copies of the implementation matrix, you will get them. I think my colleagues are running around trying to circulate copies to the journalists. And if you're on WhatsApp also, I think they'll be able to send copies of the compendium. We have limited hard copies, so we'll be able to share to your email or to your WhatsApp should you need a copy of the compendium that Pastor was showing us. I will open the floor for maybe a follow-up questions, points of clarity from the PEMSEC. So you tell us your name and your media house again, should you want to say something.
Thank you very much. My name is Mkhululi Ncube from Star FM. Maybe my first question will be addressed to Pastor T. Masugu. Are you happy about the response that you got from the President? Maybe looking at the fact that there has been talk that maybe your meeting with the President has compromised you as civil society, but maybe looking at what is coming from the government, maybe what's your take on that? Then maybe to the permanent secretary, there are requirements that when a person is applying for birth certificates, you are supposed to bring a witness or people who are supposed to say something for you to be able to obtain such a document. Under this dispensation, are those requirements going to be abolished so that all the victims of the Gukurahundi, as you said, who are supposed to apply for birth certificate will be able to apply without those requirements? Any special dispensation on that? Maybe I will take those two at the moment.
Thank you. I'll take maybe two more, and then I'll allow the speakers to respond. Okay. I will take the other two gentlemen. Maybe you can start with Tuso. Okay, Tuso, then, yeah. And then I'll come to you. Okay,
my name is Paminas Tuso. My question is on the issue of Gukurahundi. I didn't hear much of the government's commitment from the public apology and acknowledgement of the Gukurahundi. I didn't hear much of that.
My name is Ngobani. I'm from Newsday. I realize Mabiza's presentation was silent on budget. Is there budget, for example, burials and other things that need where there is a need for?
Yeah, you can hardly hear what you're saying. So can you speak a bit louder?
I'm Ngobani from Newsday. Presentation from Mabiza is silent on budget allocations, for example, on burials and medical assistance and so forth and so forth. I wanted to find out like budget for those kind of things.
Okay. You got it? Yes. Maybe you can respond. There was a question to Pastor Musugu. Oh, you didn't get the question. I'll ask him to take it again. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I can help him. Sorry, that Mr. Ngobani. Just confirm if I captured this right. You were saying, has the government put in a budget for reburials and medical assistance? Is that what you're asking? Okay, all right. So she hadn't got the question, so I just needed to clarify. Okay, just to answer Babu Ngube, he said, are we happy from about the response from the government? I think it's definitely a step in the right direction that we have received a response, and also that there is an implementation matrix that has been provided. Now what we will need to see is how we progress from here, and I think how we progress from here is not just for the government, but is also dependent on us. So I believe that we are appreciative of the fact that we have received a response, and then let's take it further and see how far we're able to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start with the question on requirements for birth certificates. I'm sure the questioner wants to find out if we are going to waive the standard requirement that is the case with ordinary applications. Shall I say at this point in time, I'm not able to answer for the Ministry of Home Affairs. That is why we are deliberately requesting that there be further engagements between the relevant ministry and all the players, including the affected communities. I'm sure as a way forward, those can be looked into. Evidence ordinarily is very important for all practical purposes. Evidence may be required, but in certain situations, there may be need to waive that. But I'm not saying that is the case. It's a question of further engagement. Like I said, there is an expectation that already the relevant ministry is engaging with the Bulawayo Collective and the affected communities. Then there is also the issue of whether government is going to give an apology and what else? Acknowledgement in line with Gukurahundi, and you said you didn't see it on our implementation matrix. Yes, what I can say to you is on our implementation matrix, you can see there's the issue of open discussions, devise methods of freely discussing protecting those that are discussing Gukurahundi to be protected. I can just say it's a stepping stone. To me, it's a positive reaction from government to say people are now allowed to freely discuss what they experienced. It's a realization that it's part of the healing process. And as we move on, you never know where it will take us. But for now, the implementation matrix merely contains the issue of open and free discussions in terms, of course, of the law. And then the issue of budget for the reburials, the exhumations, and so forth. I think if you get to see our matrix, you then notice that the Ministry of Finance is also supposed to be an enabler. So I'm sure the line ministry will devise a way as they implement these instructions from the highest office. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the responses. I'll take another round. I think I acknowledge your hand. Then my lady there.
Okay, thank you. My name once again is Kudzanai Msengi. I think I have two questions, maybe three. The other one is related to one that was already asked by my colleague. I wanted to find out, there are concerns about the sincerity of government on this issue, arising from the fact that people feel this has been kind of a closed door discussion between NGOs and the president, so to speak. But we know that Gukurahundi is a national issue in the public domain. So people are questioning the sincerity. Is this not just some kind of PR exercise on the part of government? That's the first question. And then secondly, I think a good number of the issues that are being discussed here have to do with the NPRC. But I don't think it has been represented in these meetings. What are we saying about that?
Represented. I think it's Pastor Trevor will be able to respond to that, maybe part of the question. Okay, right.
My question goes to the Permanent Secretary, and it's in connection with the Matabeleland Water Project. This is a project that has been going on for several years. And so I wanted to find out the exact timeline in terms of the completion of the project, because we've heard several times that government has put the project on its priority list. So I think I would be glad if I go and write a story that the government is planning to complete this project on such a date, because we've written several times stories writing that the project will be completed at such a time, but it doesn't happen. So can we please have timelines?
Thank you. I think we have those two only, so maybe we can respond.
Thank you very much. I think I will respond to the question as to representation of other agencies like NPRC. I can confirm that we have been in consultation with them, and this process is a process that will seek to be all-inclusive. So you will see that as we move forward, we will be holding further meetings with different stakeholders, so that at the end of the day, it's not just NGOs, it's not just churches that are involved, but it involves the whole of society. So it's that's why it's called the Matabeleland Collective Ibuta Bonke. That's what the plan is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is this a PR exercise? What do you think? Honestly, speaking on behalf of government, I wouldn't say this is a PR exercise. You know, when government officials deliberately sit down, engage, call the highest office to interact, we come up with issues, we come up with an implementation matrix, we time frame, we come back, we feedback, we expect to continuously engage and implement this cannot be a PR exercise. What I can say to you is perhaps give us time. Some of the items we have committed ourselves to implement immediately, we are expected to feed back, and perhaps just give it time and see if it's not for real. But what I can say is this is genuine and real government interaction, and in line with paying attention to the needs of people, and also in the interest of promoting these kind of discussions, dialogue for the betterment of all of us. So I can say this is not a PR exercise, but a genuine commitment by government to fulfill its promises to the people. And speaking of the Matabeleland, the Zambezi Water Project, you wanted to hear the timelines in terms of completion of the project. I'm sorry I cannot give that, but what I can say is in terms of the implementation matrix, certain players have been identified, and also I'm very grateful to the input that came out of the further discussions that we had here. We are also going to put a lead ministry to look into these issues, the Minister of Finance. But from the implementation plan, these people have been asked to give monthly updates. I'm sure we all agree that this is a very, very massive project. And in terms of the monthly updates, we should be going somewhere in terms of finalization of the project, but I cannot give timelines. The timelines will come as the relevant ministries engage with the communities and all interested players. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There seem to be one hand. Okay. Is that a hand? No. No, there is no hand. So, let me then thank the panel. Madam Pemsek, thank you so much for taking your time to sit with us here and engage the media, members of the media. Pastor Masuku, thank you so much. Madam Chiwenga, thank you so much for your time. I think I will hand over to our chief moderator, facilitator, Madam Jane Williams, to give us maybe further instructions in terms of how we proceed from here. Thank you so much, members of the media.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for all of your attendance here today. Members of the media, you joined the Matabeleland Collective Membership from Bulawayo, Mat North, Mat South, as we have been together since morning to debate and take apart the matrix that the Office of the President Cabinet have given us. As we close our activity today, we invite you all to join us in some lunch. Members of the collective, please stand ready, willing and able. The matrix is only going to work if we are going to demand it work and hold government accountable, hold the President accountable for what has been promised to us. And yes, we still have work undone that we need to engage on and make sure we achieve it. But if I can ask for a volunteer, unless our upcoming bishop is going to do it, please may we close with a word of prayer and enjoy lunch together. I thank you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you this afternoon for your goodness. We thank you for your faithfulness. We thank you for your loving kindness that endures forever. We just want to thank you, Lord, for the business that is taking place today. We thank you, Lord, for we know that this is but a start. But Lord, even as your word tells us that we are not to despise the days of small beginnings, thank you that we do not despise where we are and what has already been achieved. And as we move forward, we just want to thank you, Lord, for unity amongst the collective, oh Lord. We thank you for unity even with the ministries that we need to work with. And Heavenly Father, we speak your protection upon each and every person that has traveled here, even as they go back to their homes. And Lord, we also want to thank you for the lunch that we are about to eat. We ask that you bless it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. We've just been advised by the hotel that